Hi, I'm Garm1, and this is Midgardia's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with Brian. How's it going?
It's going just fine, thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Heavens of Kefri?
So, Heavens of Kefri is a role-playing game that is based around the idea of you playing NPC characters that actually are from like an MMORPG, so like a computer or a console style massive multiplayer game. And you basically, so you are playing these NPCs, these awoken characters that are basically trying to survive in the server without letting anybody know that they're there. Um, so it's in some ways it kind of fits the sort of horror vibe that the original sort of SRD that I used to create it, which probably talk a little bit about later. Um, but yeah, it's you're trying to survive, but and if you die, you don't like die. You're just despawned. But that'll probably be happening pretty frequently throughout your adventure mission.
Such is the life of an NPC.
Yes, such is the life of an NPC.
So, tonally, where does this game sit?
I guess it really could depend on necessarily the way you want to play it. I kind of view it as being tonally more of along the lines of a sort of a spiritual journey to a certain extent for your characters because they're trying to figure out you could have the if you decide to play this out as a campaign, you could have the campaign be about trying to figure out why things are the way they are. So there's some elements that I kind of drew into the basic backstory that kind of comes from Egyptian mythology, which is one of the reasons for the sort of Egyptian motifs in a lot of the art and stuff. But also drawing in from some, contemporary sort of philosophical, or at least philosophically leaning popular culture, like let's say The Matrix or Dot Hack or some other things that are kind of similar to that. Um, so you could have it be like a sort of somber, serious journey, where you're going through that sort of that psychological trauma to a certain extent of like constantly dying but not actually dying. Or you could have it be like a really sort of campy, not that serious, just having fun sort of a thing. So it really depends on how you want to play it.
Right on, right on.
Mhm.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about, Heavens of Kefri, the in-setting fictional MMO?
So the in setting fiction basically is like we've both mentioned, it kind of takes place within this MMO. So you're and like I said, your characters are NPCs within it, and because you've kind of become aware of the fact that you're inside this game, you've gained certain abilities to be able to sort of manipulate the code some, which is one of the reasons why you're able to kind of do some of the things that you do. So, for example, sort of like in the back end, you can create what I refer to in the text as a shaped space, which is because you manipulating the code in the game is actually referred to as like shaping names, which is a reference to Egyptian sort of magical beliefs. Um, so you're able to create the space that can look any way you want. So this is kind of where you spend your downtime, or like if you die in the game, you kind of go into if you despawn, right, on a mission, you go into this space, um, and you can kind of reach out of it and kind of help your friends sometimes to get them to be able to reroll. Um, and the the actual MMO itself, like I mentioned before, it has some Egyptian motifs. It has some of that of pulling in from the mythology of, like, let's say, Kefri himself, who was sort of like an avatar of, or a an aspect of Ra, the kind of creator deity, um, for a lot of different versions of Egyptian mythology. So,
I've heard of that
um,
guy. I used to play him in
y-
Smite way back in the day.
Right. um, and one of the basic ideas behind a campaign that I'm gonna hopefully create is basically you're trying to find a way of not only kind of surviving but also kind of creating a safe space for yourself beyond just your little shape space, because of course you still get kicked out in having to go into like the actual game world simulation and having to do these fights you don't necessarily want to do all the time. So you're trying to kind of find a safe space to be able to just like stay in permanently, as opposed to having to constantly get dragged into this sort of other world that you don't necessarily want to be in. And again, because you're an AI, you can make your ship look however you want. You can make your sort of avatar whenever you're in your shape space look however you want. You can do all kinds of hobbies or role playing or whatever you want to do in your shape space. It's just that it's basically just a large room that you can make look however you want, but that's it. It's not really what you're looking for necessarily as like a permanent home, so to speak, um,
It's more like
inside
a
of the server.
yeah, it's more like a crappy
Mhm.
bachelor suite than a home.
Yeah, it's your studio apartment, but you can make it look however you want. So if you want it to be a space bar, it can be a space bar. If you want it to look like a painting studio, it can be that. It could be a real, an actual studio apartment, or like I don't know, like maybe a contained but outside space, like a deck. Just you let your imagination run wild.
Put a bonsai tree in there.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the mechanical foundation of Heavens of Kefri, the bad time game SRD?
Yes. So it's based off of the Bad Time SRD, which is based around the basic idea is that you have a pool of four-sided dice. Um, the base being four die. You have to roll four dice, but the object for all of your rolls is you're trying to roll under seven. So of course, if you have the basic four dice, that means it's actually quite unlikely that you'll succeed. So the statistics that you get, the five different sort of approaches that you can kind of upgrade your character in, means that you actually roll fewer dice. Um, excuse me. So, for example, if my character is really good at being stealthy, or sneaky, right? Then I would only roll two dice, or maybe three dice instead of four, which again makes it much more likely that I might succeed. And that's actually incredibly important in this game and other versions that kind of use this particular system, the bad time system, is because when you fail, in my game, I call them bugs, but they have different names depending upon which version you're using. But it adds to a penalty pool that everybody adds to every roll that they do from then on out until the mission is over or everybody's dead. Um, and this kind of pulls in from like the sort of horror genre where, like, if you think of old style horror movies, like slasher films, let's say, right? All the characters get slowly picked off one by one because they made a series of bad decisions or mistakes. Um, again, as you add more bugs, even if you're a character who has pretty good statistics, or you reliably use your good statistics all the time, if all of your friends, all of the other players, right, are getting bad rolls, then eventually you're going to end up getting bad rolls too. And another reason why this is incredibly important is because the game system doesn't really have like hit points or anything. Instead, if you roll a 16 or higher, you just automatically die. Um, and then in my game, of course, it would be your ship is destroyed somehow. You despawn and you get thrown into your shaped space, or with at a shaped space with some of your other AI companions, right? And then you basically have to wait there until either the mission is done, or the mission is completed, of course.
Right. So,
Mhm.
16 or higher would be a 4 on all 4 dice, right?
Yeah, that would be a 4 on all 4 dice if again, but that's before you add in any penalties. So,
Right.
if you're rolling a really bad stat and you're incredibly unlucky, you might end up dying right off the bat. Um, which would be very unfortunate, of course, but that's not really very likely to happen. Um Although I don't know, in some of those campy horror films, you might be the unlucky one who gets picked off right at the beginning. In which case you get to kind of sit on the sidelines, which would be unfortunate, but you get to still engage by reaching in and helping your friends by helping them re-roll whenever something bad happens to you.
And you get to still wisecrack the whole time. So
Yeah, exactly. Right. They can all still hear you. So,
yeah,
you can be like, "Oh, that was a horrible idea. Why did you do that?" Right? Or whatever you want to do. I don't know. You could just, pretend to be we can the camera pans to you and you're just like, painting in the corner or creating like a sculpture or just, "Oh, this is so fun." Right? And
I made a
everybody else is over here, "Oh, we're all gonna die."
I made a sculpture of you tripping on that rock.
Exactly.
Thanks, Steve, or whatever the Egyptian equivalent to Steve is. I'm not even gonna guess.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the character sheet, and I like that instead of like numbers, you got how many dice you roll. You just kind of like shade them in as you remove them.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the basic ideas behind that was just to try to simplify it since, roll under systems, even if there's a single static number, can sometimes be hard to remember, like, what exactly I'm supposed to be doing. Um, Especially if you're used to, obviously, a game like, let's say, Dungeons& and Dragons, where normally when you're trying to do something, you're rolling a single die and you're trying to hit a certain number. Um This way, it kind of simplifies for people who are not used to pool systems, or people who might be used to a pool that's static, like, let's say, for, Powered by the Apocalypse, where you're normally always just rolling 2d6 and then adding stuff to it or whatever.
I rolled a 100 when I played Eclipse Phase one time. I was very excited. I was wrong to be excited.
Oh. That's oh, man. That's never good.
Somebody was gently just like, Garm, that's not how this works. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
So, how did Heavens of Kefri come about?
Well, the first thing that kind of inspired this is the actual Egyptian sort of aspect to the game itself is kind of been it's just been something that's been lingering in my mind. Just the basic idea of what would have, Egyptian civilization might have looked like if, let's say, the Romans didn't end up kind of taking over after all of the Anthony and Cleopatra stuff that a lot of people might be at least vaguely familiar with. Um, and if it had kind of continued on for much longer after that, what the art might have looked like, what the people might have looked like, what the culture might have kind of evolved into, that kind of thing. Um, so that kind of inspired the art and the sort of mythology and the sort of feeling behind the game. But the actual idea of playing NPCs, or what would normally be NPCs, actually came from um, an idea that I had originally actually for the Harmony Drive SRD that Kat McDonald made when when they first introduced that to me, or when I first heard about it, the very first thing that popped into my head was, "Oh, this would be cool for like a stewardship game." For like you are the NPCs, like if you think back to like traditional Dungeons and Dragons, they would always have all of these, hirelings that you would have who would do stuff for you. Like carrying like thinking like back to like first and second edition. Um which have kind of like been abandoned in later versions of the game. But what if we had a game where instead of playing the heroes, you played the people who like minded the estate while the heroes went off adventuring, right? Or whatever sort of investments they might have, right? You're trying to protect it, trying to improve it, that kind of stuff. Um, which I thought would actually be pretty cool. And I still hopefully want to create that game. But just the NPC idea combined with finding out about End of the Line that Kyle Tam had created. That's kind of the inspiration for for her SRD in the first place. That all of these ideas kind of combined together, and then this is just kind of what came out.
And now we've got sick Egyptian space adventures.
Yeah, now we have yes.
So,
And yeah. Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. Sorry.
So why don't you tell us about the crowdfunding goals that you got going here for, because this is an itch funding project.
Yes, this is an inch funding project. So the basic goals that I kind of have are for like the first goal, it's mainly just kind of compensating me for like some of the continuing improving of the art and the layout that I'm in the process of doing right now. So what to be perfectly honest, whether it hits that goal or not, this is going to end up happening. It's just that it'll make me feel better about having invested the time and the energy into doing it. Um, um, but the next goal after that, which is the one that I actually kind of have set in the sale, if you look at the bar on the page, that's what it's trying to measure, is to kind of create a campaign guide. Because the basic idea of what is in the book right like in the text right now is just pulling in basic adventures that you might find in a sci-fi MMO like Eve Online, where you're trying to protect a space from the human characters who are trying to destroy it, or you're harassing industrialists, or doing different sorts of adventures like that, basic missions. But I really would like to create sort of like a combined campaign where again, like I mentioned before, you're trying to kind of find a safe space for yourself inside this server that keeps drawing you into this conflict that you don't want to be a part of. And kind of delving a bit more into sort of the Egyptian mythological connections that I kind of wanted to make, like with Nephti and some of the other sort of deities that are kind of less known, at least to like modern Western audiences. Um, so yeah, I kind of want to try to pull that in if I can into that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, I don't necessarily really have like I mean, I wrote more number goals after that, but most of it's basically just like get better art, maybe try to contract art out for commission art from other people, which would be awesome. Because this, if I do that, that'd be the first time I've done that. Because all of my other games, I've had to either create the art myself or kind of pull in from just like publicly available images and things. So
I mean, and I do like the art that you've done for this. The
thank you.
deity whose name I can't remember. Is that Ra on the page? I don't think that's Ra.
Oh no. That's Hermanubis. So it's Anubis, but it's from sort of like the Greco-Egyptian or the Roman Egyptian period, where Anubis got merged with Hermes because they're both psychopomps. They both deliver people to the underworld. Is one of their roles. So the Greco the first the Greeks under the Ptolemies were like merging a bunch of deities together because of course they were Greek and they were ruling over Egyptians, so they wanted to kind of merge them to a certain extent to make it easier, more palatable for their Greek citizens to get involved in Egyptian life. Um, so that was one of the kind of creations of that.
And as with any merger, some positions have to be cut, some things get merged together.
Right. Yeah. They kind of so when these two deities got synchronized, that's the reason why Anubis isn't wearing traditional clothing, traditional like Egyptian sort of like New Kingdom or Middle Kingdom clothing. Instead, he's wearing a Greek tunic, and then the sort of red cape. So yeah.
You talk smack about your own art, but you've got like the details on here. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
Also, yeah, I realized the moment after I said it that Raw has, a bird head. I should know that one. But
Well, no, well, I mean, yeah, well, Ra's always running around with different. I mean, there's Ra as a human, there's Ra as human bird, there's Ra as bird, there's Ra as well, Kefri. So I mean, Ra's just weird and complicated because he's so old. So
happens to all of us as we grow older.
go through different life phases.
And here's my midlife crisis where I was a bird.
Yes. where I merged with my great 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 grandson.
Classic. Happens all the time.
Yes.
So, one last question. Where can people find you?
On a lot of the social media, you can, especially like on Twitter, you can find me under Hessan underscore Yongdi. And also on a lot of different Discord servers. That's the name I use pretty much everywhere. Um, and you can also find me on my website blog and also my YouTube channel at Hessen's County. And hopefully, I'll have a bit more information up on the game and those in the coming weeks. So keep an eye out on that.
Right on, right on. And for everybody
Thank you.
watching home, you can find a link to Heavens of Kefri below. And yeah, have a good night.
Thank you.